Hey.
And that's a little bit of music from Kevin, McLeod, and that's from intercontect.com, whatever. It's one of those days where nothing is working. So, are you there?
Hello.
Hi, Ryan. How's your day going?
Oh, not too bad. Not too bad. About yours?
Oh, you wouldn't believe what I have been going through the last couple of days. Trying to get everything. I got some more. I got a different compressor, set up another station, all these computers all tied into each other, and it's just been a total nightmare to try to get everything to work like it's supposed to.
It's hard enough to get one computer to work like it's supposed to, let alone 5 or 6 of them.
Oh, yeah. So, tonight, what are we talking about? Giants?
Giants that once roamed the earth.
Oh, yeah, that's kind of scary.
Well, it's not as scary as you might think. When you first think about it, yeah. But you start doing the research on it, and you find out that it probably was. It definitely was possible.
I think so.
Well, and one of the really neat things that I always thought that, if there was, it was something from another planet maybe, but the way science explains it is thousands, millions of years ago, the ozone was so much thicker on the planet that not only did human life live longer, but it grew bigger.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was reading, too. We're going back the Roman days. It was supposed to be, giants, the Egyptians, and even going back farther than that. I mean, and they have found skeletons and stuff like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. The number of skeletons that pop up on the internet when you search images is eerie.
Oh, yeah.
And, of course, I'm sure there's some of those that are Photoshopped.
Oh, yeah.
With any phenomenon, there's fake.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, you got to weed through all of that. But there was actually an instance, I believe it was in Russia in the 20th century, where several people witnessed giants.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it seemed like, too, some of it, too, like the military supposedly ran across, now I was reading at one point, ran across a giant and supposedly killed it, and then naturally they said that never existed.
Imagine that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I don't think they want, if there was giants, if you go even back to the Bible, it talks about giants.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. So, I mean, but what's the classification of a giant? But from what I've been reading, some of these people were, 8, 10, and bigger feet tall.
Yep, 12 plus feet tall. And
yeah.
They, one of the things I came across when researching this week was people talking about giants at 7 and 7.5, 8 feet tall. And to me, I don't think that's quite giant. When I say giant, I mean I'm thinking at least 10 feet tall.
Oh yeah.
That in my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, there's basically if everybody on this planet is from the same original pair, which in biblical times that's what we believe, then the genetics are there for there to be some very large people every so often. And we do have, in current time and through all of time, we've had, a 7, 8 foot tall person.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's been,
the old traveling shows weren't a show without the tall giant.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah. I was just looking at an article about a lady just a few years ago. She now has passed on because they don't seem to live, at least the people now who seem to go like 8.5 feet tall or 9 feet tall. They have a very short life span.
Well, part of it is because the thing that's causing them to grow taller is usually some type of a bone or genetic disorder.
Yeah.
There's a couple different disorders that will cause that. It actually causes advanced aging and problems with the bones themselves. I went to junior high school with a kid who was freakishly tall, and he had a disorder that caused it. His fingers were, scary long.
Oh, yeah.
Everything about him was big.
Yeah.
But he was skinny and tall, huge.
Yeah.
And I did hear in the last few years that he did finally pass away from whatever it was.
Yeah, and then, it seemed like, too, like a lot of them, I'm reading about the giants and stuff, they had a tendency of wanting to eat the small people.
There was some Indian writings from a tribe that coexisted with some giants, and they claimed that they were definitely flesh eaters.
Oh yeah,
and they finally got brave enough. They blocked off the cave that they lived in and started a fire at the opening of the cave, and basically told them, quit preying on us or you die, and they never got an answer.
Yeah.
And years later, they're in this cave harvesting bat guano for fertilizer, and they start finding these bones.
Yeah, and I've seen pictures of some of these skulls and some of the remains, and they're huge. To the point where they would have to be at least 12 to 15 feet tall, or even some of them I was reading about, they were talking about up to 18 feet tall.
Yeah. And the thing is, too, that we're not talking in one part of the world. We're talking all over the world. We're talking South America, Africa, Europe. We're talking pretty much the only place that there really isn't a huge concentration of it is North America. And, of course, that's so far before we were really established. Even in prehistoric times, the establishment was more than likely concentrated in Europe, South America, and places like that.
Yeah.
Hey, quick question.
Yeah. For some reason, your mic's not working. Oh, hold on for a minute. Kevin, it's this mic. That mic's not tied into that system. He's talking into a dead mic. Is that better?
Perfect.
Or it might be better for us. I'm not sure.
Perfect.
Okay. Kevin, you're on now.
Sorry about that.
You can drop it down to hear more yes. Okay, there we go.
There we go.
That's a good one. Okay, go ahead.
Now, I had a question. Have you seen Gulliver's Travels? It's a movie that came out in 1996. It's called.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's about. Well, it has some giants in it, but I don't think the whole movie's about giants. But at least it has some points to what we're talking about. Let me pull up the plot.
I think, too, a lot of the movies, and you go back to the Greeks and all that stuff, and even in their writings, they talk about giants and stuff like that.
There's drawings in ancient caves where the people sitting down are as tall as the people standing.
Yeah, that's.
And if you stand those people up, they're quite a bit taller than the other folks.
Oh yeah.
When you really do the research, there's just as much, if not more, proof of giants actually being on Earth than there is for aliens.
Oh yeah,
visiting the planet,
and actually,
by a long shot.
Oh yeah, and I'm just kind of wondering if maybe even the giants maybe were from a race from another planet. This.
Yeah, and there's a lot. The Anunnaki talk about that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of research that goes way back that talks about the possibility and actually suggests that is exactly a source of that.
Yeah, like they talk about how the giants would attack, the people, the humans, and then the humans naturally would go after the giants, And,
well, I'm here to say that the humans and the giants were both humans is what is kind of the way I'm looking at it. I think what happened in my mind, because if you look at the scientific side of it, that shows because there's actually been where they've actually in a controlled environment they have created a small, basically a what's the word I'm looking for? Ecosystem.
Yeah.
That simulates what it would have been like, hundreds of thousands of years ago, where we had a huge, thick ozone layer that was bouncing more of the UV rays back into space, and that supported longer living life and larger life. Well, as that changed, as that thing started to, the giant started to fall away and the smaller man started to come up, there was some coexistence there.
Yeah, that's...
And a lot of the giants had 6 fingers or 2 rows, multiple rows of teeth.
Yeah, kind of, like they had their main set, and then right behind that they had another set of teeth.
Yeah, and that's kind of how evolution works. The body changes over generations to adapt to the needs.
Well, I don't mean to. Well, I'm not trying to contradict this, and so there's some places in the world that tend to wrap bandages around babies at birth, and over time, that baby's head tends to grow rapidly, and it expands, and it grows to certain shapes and sizes.
Well, yeah, and there were ancient tribes that would tie boards to their pieces of wood or rock to their forehead, and it made their foreheads taller.
Yeah, and another thing too, like the tribes would also stretch their necks, but that's not going to make their torso or their arm bones and leg bones, be long. I mean, I'm looking here, like in Nevada, in 1931, they found skeletons that were between 8 and 10 feet tall. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that kind of, there's been tribes that have done things to like shape their heads, like the cone type of shape, stretch their necks and make their necks long, but then that doesn't make a giant. A giant is no. That just shows how the body, and eventually they start reproducing that way. Yeah.
Because it's just like evolution. If humans stop using their thumbs and just basically taped them to the palm of their hand and never used them, eventually they'd cease to exist.
Yeah.
Over generations.
Yeah, and another thing I was noticing in my readings about giants too, that they became more flesh eaters towards humans after the humans arrived, and then started, killing all the extra prey, and there wasn't enough actually to go around, and that's when the giants, or what I read, started to be cannibals and start eating the humans.
Well, and let's face it, especially, thousands of years ago, we don't have you didn't have the thought processes we have now.
No.
And in a lot of ways that's probably good. But we look at a smaller creature, or what we think is a
inferior
or substandard, whatever you want to call it. We look more to them as a source of life more than as coexistence.
Oh yeah. And there's tribes in Africa, or there were, that actually ate the dead because they thought by eating the dead, part of their spirit would be absorbed into them.
I can totally understand them thinking that way.
Yeah.
We are bombarded with information now. I can't imagine how life would have been where things are happening all around the world that you have no clue about. All you know about is what happens right in front of your eyes, your entire life, and you may only explore 20 miles at the most
Well,
where you were born.